Hello and welcome to the first review section of History with R&R Roundtable, and I was a little mean. So,
A little?
Mean.
what I did was I made the demonstration that even though this documentary that we're going to talk about today was produced by Timeline, which for all intents and purposes, Timeline has some really good documentaries. Some of them are biased as hell, but they're really good. They're relatively interesting for the most part. However, there's this one, and this one, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the worst documentaries ever produced. If you want to know how bad it is, you look it up and go look at the comment section. Especially once you get to episode 3. This documentary is 3 parts, an hour each. And well, it's 3 hours of confusion. It's 3 hours of what the hell. And when you're finally done this documentary, you are left going, can I have my 3 hours back? Please.
Yeah, I really want it back.
This hurts my head. Why? So basically, I'll give you the quick rundown of what they were supposed to do. They start this documentary with the hypothesis that they have found a submarine in the Mediterranean.
Baltic.
Baltic Sea.
Yeah, in the Baltic Sea that was hit by a Russian submarine, which sounds very cool. The problem is by the end of this documentary, they never do find this sub, and there is absolutely zero evidence of a collision. You go 3 hours, they never do find the sub, and there is no proof of their hypothesis at all. So, Jeff, how did you enjoy it?
Oh, I thought it was lovely. I want to throw it into a fire. It was bad. And I hate you for making us watch it. I wish I was as eloquent as Loki is on your Picard reviews.
Although I might say this, the writers of STD and Picard actually are better than this documentary.
Maybe barely.
Barely, but at least they can stay on point.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, I mean their points are terrible, but at least they stay on point.
At times I thought I was watching a video game watching this thing.
Yeah. Mark?
Some of the graphics they put up
First,
look like menus on a video game.
So, Mark, how did you like it?
First, let me state that I really hate you for suggesting this. Let's watch this for one. And I won't get to the meat and potatoes because we'll talk about that in a minute. But I will not lie. I only made it through an hour and a half of it before I dozed off because it was that boring. I agree with Jeff that it was all over the place. And the only thing that Russian that hit anything was a ball of vodka over whoever edited or came up with this idea of making this documentary, because it made no sense with how it jumped around. It was really bad.
Yeah. They dive on everything but a German submarine.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Everything.
Yeah.
They dive on a galleon. They dive on this ship, that ship, another ship, but they never dive on a German submarine.
Well, they did dive on one German submarine. That wasn't it.
But that wasn't the one they were targeting.
Yeah.
It just...
It's a bait and switch.
Yeah, It absolutely baffles my ever-loving mind. I would expect something like this from, like,
The History Channel.
No, no, I would expect something like this from like a high school project,
Oh, okay.
right? This to me has high school project written all over it. The problem is if a high school project could have the budget, like your parents are very rich and they want you to get an A, and you and your friends end up getting drunk and high throughout the entire thing and spend all the budget on booze and weed. That's what this documentary is.
It would have still been better if it'd been that, because at least it would have had a sense of humor.
Well, there's that.
Well, yeah.
So the reason that I force this upon my poor colleagues here is because I wanted to stress the point that if you listen to modern people, for the most part, they're telling you that, well, make sure when you're watching something it has official sources. Well, this is produced by Timeline. The Timeline stamp and stuff is in the bottom corner. And this is promoted and this is produced and approved for consumption by Timeline. Timeline, as I said at the beginning, has a lot of really good documentaries. So if you'd seen their other documentaries, you would have been, oh, this is Timeline. Cool. The problem is this is Timeline for like a grade 10, grade 9, 6 level, and it's brutal. This thing is brutal. It is a 3-hour slog that I don't wish upon most people I don't like. But in the name of science, Mark and Jeff had to watch it.
In the name of torture, you mean?
Because I think it's really important that we can sit there and we can go, okay, this is, like I said, produced by Timeline. That's the most scariest words I've ever heard when it comes to this documentary, is that it was produced and edited by Timeline. You would expect, if you watch this documentary, you would expect that this was put together by 3 guys or 4 guys on a YouTube channel that are just doing this out of their backyard kind of thing. The problem is even that would have probably been better. I've seen those kind of documentaries, and even those are better. This thing is brutal. It is absolutely terrible. There is no plot. There is no coherent story in this entire thing. They will talk to... They do what some documentaries do, by bringing in people that are experts in a field so that they can say, well, we had experts in the field that we're talking about in the documentary. And those parts of the documentary make sense because you have one gentleman who has been researching the Baltic forever, and he's got all these books behind him, and they make sure to take shots of all the books behind this guy. And he sits down and he talks, and everything he says makes sense, and he never says yes or no to their hypothesis, but he can't prove it. He can't give them evidence to back up their hypothesis, but they have an expert talking about their topic. But it's all filler, and it's all smoke and mirrors, because it's just having an expert on a panel so that you can say you had an expert in the field. Basically,
The whole thing felt filler to me.
yeah.
They get you on this idea that a German sub got hit by a Russian sub, and then everything else has nothing to do with that, except for occasionally they'll throw that back in. Oh, yeah, we're looking for this German sub.
Yeah.
I was still questioning the fact of who was actually leading the investigation too. I mean, there were so many people that were chiming in on the situation, and it left you like wondering, well, who's actually doing this and why? Because the dive team that they started with was, I don't remember ever hearing any of them even interviewed. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, and who knows what they were diving on at that point, except for the one boat that they found that was an American boat that they dove on, and the other U boat. Who knows?
Yeah. And even even when you look at what they were doing, they looked ill prepared on every single aspect of their search. In everything they did, they were ill prepared for it. In every aspect, every turn. There's a lot of this documentary is them going to ships that have already been found, that have
Mm-hmm.
already been documented, where like they have absolutely 100% idea where they are because they're historical monuments. Um
Well, also let's not forget the disappearing Russian guy with this submarine. What did anything ever come up about that again?
no.
The one that I was questioning myself. I was like, why is this even in here? Because nothing was ever mentioned in the parts that I got to before I dozed off.
Yeah, no. No.
I wish I had dozed off.
And again, what does a 15th century galleon have to do with anything with a U boat?
Nothing. But they
Okay,
could find that.
yeah, that's
Um
yeah.
it was a whole bunch to do about nothing.
Hmm.
You sit there and you watch this thing, and the part that pisses me off is I'm a sucker for, a good documentary of them diving on ships. Even if they're ships that have been found before. Like I've watched more than one of the Titanic. I've watched more than one on HMS Hood. I've watched more than one on many other shipwrecks that are there. Um, but this is just brutal. Like, this is just terrible to the point where they never stay on topic throughout the entire show. And you watch 3 hours of mind-boggling stupidity to where you go, well, okay. They're finally getting to the submarine. They're finally getting to the submarine, and by this point, you're ready to throw something. And nope, it's some other ship that has absolutely nothing to do with this. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And then you're like, okay, the next one will be the sub. Nope. And then you get all the way to the end, and the credits roll, and you go, what? Why? No. When I first watched this, it was at like 3 a.m. I was in pain, and that's usually when I start watching documentaries. And I watched the entire thing, and I think I was more angry at the documentary than I was at the pain I was in, and that is saying something. And I remember telling Jeff about this one, and Jeff asked me the question, "Well, it can't be that bad." Well, Jeff, was it that bad?
Yeah, it was worse. And they were putting up all this information about all the different cities they were going to. What did that have to do with anything?
Nothing.
It
And
was
at one point they were in Stockholm and they were commenting on the Swedish girls. What the?
Yeah,
Huh?
this would have
I
been
just
more
said this was
appropriate for
made for a grade 10 final exam, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a combination of the History Channel and the Travel Channel making a documentary on everything and nothing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
But this is a really good example, I think, of the my counter argument to, well, if it's produced by a well-known name, then it must be good and their facts must be trusted. Well, I challenge you to watch this and still say that because this is yikes. This documentary is, in my humble opinion, one of the worst documentaries put to film. I have seen. I don't even think there's a YouTuber out there that could have done worse, and I know a few of them that I absolutely hate. They put more research into into their content than this. This
Oh,
was bad.
the production was bad too at times. There's
Mhm.
mumbling speech, uneven audio, bad transitions. For example, when they were talking about Stockholm, they suddenly transitioned to the dive team, which was in another place, and they were talking about something that they were doing. I don't remember now, but it was such a bad transition. It just made no sense.
Yeah, the whole thing makes no sense from start to finish, and you keep hoping that it gets better
Yeah, I
because
was
it's
hoping it was
3
getting better.
hours long, and you sit there and you go, "Well, okay, they must have thrown the outtakes in." That's it. They must have thrown the outtakes. This never actually made the document. This has got to be part of the outtakes. And then when you get to the end of this thing, you go, "No, no, this was the documentary." I'd hate to see what hit that editing floor. Like if this is what made it, can you imagine the brainless shit that didn't make it?
Obviously, it must have been the best part of the documentary that hit the floor because there was nothing worth a flip about that whole thing.
No, they left the best part of the documentary in there. It's where it says the end.
Yeah, well, you have a point there. I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
Yeah.
But it just it blows my mind that this could get an official stamp. And by that I mean, like I said, produced by Timeline. You would think that Timeline would have standards of some sort and would sit there and go, "No. Thanks for the B-roll, but no." But somehow this made it into a documentary and is probably a VHS or something somewhere. And because it has Timeline on it, it has credibility. But this thing is there's just no rhyme or reason for this because they dive on a whole bunch of ships that have absolutely nothing to do with a U-boat. They tell you a whole bunch of useless information that have nothing to do with the subject matter. And to me, this is going to Wikipedia in video form.
Yeah.
And I mean like those really bad Wikipedias. Like the
Mm-hmm.
ones that have absolutely nothing, like there's no truth in them from the starting line to the end line. And it's that in film form.
Hmm.
It is absolutely brutal. So if anybody thinks that can't be mean, or Robert in this case, because I'm on this channel, um, I have two people here that will vouch for that. That I can be, uh, and
Your
at
time's coming. Your time's coming.
somewhere, some way, I'm probably wanted by the Geneva Convention, because of this.
Now I have a question for you, Robert. Did you
Yeah,
watch it again?
yes, kind of.
Okay,
You
kind
poor
of.
I
What
skimmed.
unfortunate
define
soul.
kind of?
I skimmed it. Because here's what would happen. I would start watching and I go, "Oh yeah, I remember this. I remember everything that went through it." And I went, Yeah, no. Okay, was the second one the a better one? Come on, there's gotta be something. And then I'd watch a bit of this with the second part, and I go, "Oh yes, I remember all of this now." Yep, I don't have the blood pressure pills. Next, and I'd move to the third one. I went, definitely don't have the blood pressure pills. And then I watched the end credits, and I smiled happily. Um, but the
Well,
whole time I'm sitting there and I'm going, he. They're watching this. So that was rather enjoyable for me. Um,
you're a cruel man, Robert. Cruel.
Mhm.
but in all seriousness, I recommend that nobody watches this. Because it is, unless you have 3 hours that you never want back again, by all means watch this documentary. Um, if you want to lose IQ points, watch this documentary.
Oh, that was your plan.
If you turn around and you watch this documentary and you put it to, like I said, a grade 10 history teacher, you'd get an F. This whole thing would get an F if it was graded properly. I mean, maybe not anymore, because I've heard about some of the grading policies, and I shake my head.
I'm with you there.
I mean, there was a time not too long ago where they weren't allowed to give a kid a 0 even if they weren't in class, which puzzled me to no end. But this, from start to finish, it starts promising, because you're like, you get hooked by the, oh well, this could be a really good, this could be really cool. Even if it's proven wrong, this could be really cool. Them diving on it, them doing the research on this U-boat, yada yada yada. There's very little to do with, I mean, even if most of this documentary would have been on the U-boat itself, and they would have been talking about the war in the Atlantic, and they would have been talking about the, you know, the the less talked about the U-boats, about them being in the freaking Baltic. Because most people, they think U-boat, they think Atlantic, and that's where it starts and stops. However, it was a little bit more than that, but we don't hear about that. So even if it was that aspect of it, just that aspect, and they never did find the sub, I could be okay with that. But this is a whole new level of special.
Mhm.
This documentary
One way to put it.
is brutal. And if this documentary had been done by a YouTuber, I wouldn't be that hard on it. But again, it was put out by Timeline. And if nothing else, this documentary stands as living proof that even the professionals can put out absolute garbage. And I mean absolute garbage. I think you are stupider after you watch this documentary. You don't learn anything. Very little, unless, you like random facts thrown at you. If that's the case, then you'll love this documentary. But I think what was more humorous to me was going through the comment section, because some of the written comments on these videos, because you can get this thing on YouTube, and the comment section are more articulate than the documentary. They're articulate because it's blind, unadulterated rage. But it's it's better thought out than the documentary that you watched, which is entertaining.
So, are we going to put the links to these 3 videos in the description?
Yes, I will
Now,
do that. I will state that I do not recommend you actually go and click on said links.
I may go back and just read the comments. I did
Oh,
not read the comments
oh, you
before.
have to read the comments. The comments are hilarious
I might add to that those comments.
because
I might as well.
they roast the daylights out of this thing.
Good.
And it gets worse. You start from the first video because they break it up into 3. It's a 3-parter. And in the first one, some of the comments you'll get are the next 2 better be better. Then you get to the second one and it's like the last one better be better. And then by the time you get to the third one, it's I wasted 3 hours of my life. What the Great. Absolutely great. But this documentary is my go-to when somebody and if you go back in the archives, anytime anybody has ever mentioned a really bad documentary, this is the one that I will point to. And like I said, up until now, Jeff would tell me, "Oh, Robert, it can't be that bad." I don't think Jeff will ever say those words to me again.
No, I learned my lesson.
Because yeah, Jeff would always tell me that, "Oh, it can't be that bad." Oh yeah.
Want to bet?
I think you made us watch it just because I said that.
Maybe. All right, so let's put a pin in this thing. All right, Jeff, promote
Well,
or final thoughts or something.
don't watch it, but if you decide you have to watch it, fair warning, at the end of episode 2, there's a scene. It's a sauna scene, and they're men that are unclothed. So
Oh yeah,
just fair warning, fair warning.
yeah. And no, ladies, that it's not the kind of men you want to see with other shirts. Unfortunately, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. All right, Mark.
My only thing is that if you're a film student and especially an editor in editing, watch this documentary for things not to do.
Yes. Yeah, this could be very, very well put as this is what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do this ever.
Mm-hmm. And if you're an historian, go there for a laugh.
Or if you if you don't have blood pressure pills and you want to see how high you can get your blood pressure in a day, this is a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, folks, thank you for joining us. The next one should be better, but I
hope so.
I wanted to start off with what I consider the worst one. So, and that way, if people have an idea of what I'm looking at for these, and then if you can find me a worst one, by all means, that's what the comment section's for. But just remember, I don't want it to be some poor YouTuber that has 1,500 subs, or 500 subs and is just trying to get his foot in the door. Those aren't the ones I want to watch, because if I see 500 subs, I'm not expecting a very big budget on these things.
Unless
this one
it's
had
well
budget.
done.
This one had budget. And I think it went on vodka. Lots and lots of vodka. All right, with that, thank you and good night.